Isa Whitney had become addicted to opium after an experiment at college. He tried to imitate the dreams described by De Quincey by soaking tobacco in laudanum, then discovered that beginning the habit was much easier than ending it. For years, the drug reduced an educated man to a pale, trembling figure with a yellow, unhealthy face, drooping eyelids, and contracted pupils. He would lie folded into a chair, physically and mentally ruined by the habit. His family and friends regarded what remained of him with both fear and pity. One evening in June 1889, my doorbell rang just as my wife and I were preparing to rest. I had only recently returned from a tiring day of medical work. My wife said, "A patient, you will have to go out again." But the visitor was a veiled woman in dark clothing. She hurried into the room, embraced my wife, and cried, "Oh, I am in such trouble. I need a little help." My wife lifted the veil and said, "Why, it is Kate Whitney. Sit here by the fire, have some wine and water, and tell us everything." Kate answered, "Please let the doctor stay. I need both his advice and your friendship." Kate said, "It is about Isa. He has not been home for 2 days, and I am terribly frightened. His opium fits used to last only 1 day. By evening he would come home sick, trembling and ashamed." Kate continued, "I have reliable word that he is at the Bar of Gold, an opium den in Upper Swandam Lane near the Eastern Docks. How can a woman go alone among those ruffians and bring her husband out?" Watson said, "As Isa's doctor, I have some influence over him. There is no need for you to enter that place. If he is at the address you gave me, I give you my word that he will be home in a cab within 2 hours." 10 minutes later, I was traveling east alone. Upper Swandam Lane was a narrow, dangerous alley behind the wharves east of London Bridge. Between a clothing shop and a gin shop, worn steps descended into a dark opening. I ordered my cab to wait, and entered a long, low room, heavy with brown opium smoke. The stone steps were hollowed in the middle by years of drunken feet, and a single oil lamp flickered above the door. Wooden sleeping berths rose in rows along the walls like the crowded forecastle of an emigrant ship. People lay in twisted positions, some silent and others muttering without listening to one another. Red points glowed as the drug burned in metal pipes. At the far end, beside a charcoal brazier, a tall, thin old man sat bent forward with his chin on his fists. A Malay attendant offered me a pipe and directed me toward an empty berth. Watson said, "I have not come to stay. I am looking for my friend, Mr. Isa Whitney." A pale, unkempt man stared out from the shadows and cried, "My God, it is Watson! What time is it?" His nerves twitched, and he seemed certain he had been there only a few hours. Watson said, "It is nearly 11 on Friday, June 19th. Isa protested, "Friday? I thought it was Wednesday." "It must be Wednesday. Why are you trying to frighten me?" Then he understood that 2 days had disappeared and began to sob. Watson said, "Your wife has waited for you for 2 days. You should be ashamed." Isa answered, "I am ashamed, but I thought I had smoked only 3 pipes, or 4, I cannot remember." Poor Kate. I would never willingly frighten her. Isa said, "Give me your hand and take me home. You have a cab, do you not? Please find what I owe and settle it for me. I am so confused that I can do nothing for myself." As I moved through the berths looking for the manager, someone quietly pulled my coat. A low voice said, "Walk past me, then look back." The words seemed to come from the old man beside the brazier. He remained wrinkled, bent, and apparently lost in the drug. I took 2 steps and looked back. With his face turned away from the room, the man straightened his body, released his false wrinkles, and opened bright, intelligent eyes. The supposed addict was Sherlock Holmes. He smiled at my astonishment, then immediately collapsed back into the loose-faced posture of a helpless old man. Watson whispered, "Holmes, what are you doing here?" Holmes whispered, "Keep your voice as low as possible. Dangerous ears are listening. Send your helpless friend home in the cab. Give the driver a note telling your wife that you are staying with me, and wait outside. I shall join you in 5 minutes." I paid Isa's bill, led him to the cab, and sent him back to Kate with my note. My original mission was complete, and I was glad to join Holmes in another investigation. A decrepit figure emerged from the den. Holmes shuffled for 2 streets, checked that no one was watching, then stood upright and laughed. Holmes laughed and said, "I suppose you imagine that I have added opium smoking to cocaine and all the other weaknesses on which you give me medical lectures," Watson replied. "I was certainly astonished to find you there." Watson said, "I came to find a friend. What brought you there?" Holmes answered, "I came to find an enemy, one of my natural enemies, or perhaps my natural prey. I am investigating a remarkable disappearance, and hoped the addict's confused talk might yield a clue, as it has before." Holmes continued, "The disguise was essential. The Lascar who manages that den knows me and has sworn revenge. If he had recognized me tonight, my life would not have been worth another hour. Behind the building, near Paul's Wharf, is a concealed trapdoor opening toward the river. It could tell terrible stories of what has passed through it on moonless nights, customers who died there, and others who were helped toward death." Watson asked, "You mean bodies?" Holmes answered, "Yes, bodies. It is the vilest murder trap on the Thames, and I fear that a respectable man named Neville St. Clair entered it and never came out." Holmes whistled for a waiting dogcart and asked, "You will come with me, Watson?" I answered, "If I can be useful." Holmes said, "A trusted companion is always useful, and a chronicler even more so." Watson asked, "Where are we going?" Holmes said, "To the Cedars, St. Clair's home near Lee in Kent. I have a double room there while I conduct the inquiry, and we have a 7-mile drive before us." Holmes drove rapidly through dark streets, across the river, and toward the southern suburbs. He remained silent and thoughtful until the houses began to thin. Holmes said, "The case appears absurdly simple, yet I cannot grasp the end of the thread. Before we reach Lee, I shall state every fact clearly. Perhaps you will see a spark where everything remains dark to me." Watson answered, "Proceed." Holmes began, "Neville St. Clair came to Lee in May 1884 with substantial money. He bought a large villa, improved the grounds, lived well, and gradually became popular in the neighborhood. In 1887 he married the daughter of a local brewer. They now have 2 children. Everyone describes him as temperate, a devoted husband, and an affectionate father. He has no fixed occupation, but holds interests in several companies and regularly conducts business in the city. Every morning he travels into London and normally returns on the 5:14 train from Cannon Street, a routine his family and neighbors know well. He is 37. His known debts are only £88 and 10 shillings, while £220 stands in his bank account. Financial trouble therefore offers no explanation for his disappearance." Holmes continued, "On Monday, St. Clair left for London earlier than usual. He told his wife that he had 2 important errands, and promised to bring his young son a box of building bricks. Soon afterward, Mrs. St. Clair received a telegram saying that a valuable parcel awaited her at the Aberdeen Shipping Company's office in Fresno Street, beside Upper Swandam Lane. She ate lunch, traveled into the city, shopped, and collected the parcel. At exactly 4:35 she walked through Swandam Lane toward the station. Only that unexpected telegram had brought her into such a neighborhood. The day was extremely hot. She walked slowly and searched for a cab because the district made her uneasy. Suddenly she heard a cry. Looking up, she saw her husband at an open second-floor window of the very opium den where you found me tonight. Neville's face was terribly agitated. He waved both hands toward her, then vanished so abruptly that she believed some irresistible force had dragged him backward. Mrs. St. Clair noticed one singular detail. He wore the dark coat in which he had left home, but his collar and necktie were missing. His throat was bare. Convinced he was in danger, she rushed down the steps, crossed the front room, and tried to climb the stairs. The Lascar manager blocked her. With help from a Danish assistant, he pushed her back into the street and refused to let her reach the upper floor. Mrs. St. Clair ran into Fresno Street and fortunately met an inspector with several constables. The inspector and 2 officers returned with her. Despite the manager's resistance, police entered the second-floor rooms. Neville St. Clair was gone. The only person there was a deformed beggar who lived in the building. He and the Lascar swore that no other man had been in the front room that afternoon. Their denial almost made the inspector doubt Mrs. St. Clair. Then she opened a small wooden box on the table, and her child's building bricks poured out. It was the present Neville had promised that morning. The beggar's confusion convinced the inspector that a serious crime had occurred. The front sitting room opened into a small bedroom overlooking the back of a wharf. A narrow strip beneath the window was dry at low tide but covered by at least 4.5 feet of water at high tide. Police found blood on the broad windowsill and several drops on the wooden bedroom floor. Behind a curtain lay nearly all of Neville's clothing: boots, socks, hat, watch, shirt, trousers, collar, and tie. Only the dark coat was missing. The clothes showed no damage, and no other exit existed. Investigators concluded that Neville must have gone through the window. The tide had been at its highest when he disappeared. The blood made it unlikely that an injured man could survive the water and strong current. The Lascar had a criminal reputation, but Mrs. St. Clair saw him at the foot of the stairs only seconds after Neville appeared above. He could have assisted, but probably had not committed the main act alone. The manager claimed complete ignorance. He said he knew nothing about his upstairs tenant Hugh Boone and could not explain Neville's clothing. Hugh Boone was a familiar figure in the financial district. He claimed to sell wax matches but actually lived as a professional beggar. Each day he sat cross-legged in a recessed corner of Threadneedle Street with a small stock of matches on his lap and a greasy leather cap on the pavement. His unforgettable appearance and clever replies attracted constant attention. Holmes had watched him collect an astonishing amount of charity in a short time. Boone had bright orange hair, a pale face, a powerful chin, and sharp dark eyes. A terrible scar contracted one side of his upper lip into a permanent twist. He walked with a limp, but was otherwise strong and well-fed. I observed that a weak limb did not prevent the rest of his body from being unusually powerful. Boone was the last known person to see Neville, and lived in the room where the clothes and toy were found. Mrs. St. Clair fainted when she saw the blood and was taken home. Inspector Barton continued a careful search of the building. Police made one mistake by allowing Boone several minutes before arrest, giving him time to communicate with the Lascar or conceal evidence. Inspector Barton soon corrected the error. Officers seized Boone, searched his clothing and room, and questioned him closely, but still found no direct evidence of murder. Blood marked Boone's right shirt sleeve. He showed a fresh cut beside the nail of his ring finger, and said it also explained the stains on the window where he had recently stood. Boone denied ever seeing Neville. He claimed the clothing was as mysterious to him as to the police, and said Mrs. St. Clair must have imagined the man at the window. He was taken to the station while Barton waited for the falling tide to reveal the mud beneath the bedroom. The tide exposed Neville's missing coat, but not his body. Every pocket was packed with coins, 421 pennies and 270 halfpennies. The weight kept the coat from being swept away. A body, however, might have been pulled into the river by the fierce current between the wharf and the house. Holmes proposed a working theory. Boone might have pushed Neville through the window without being seen, then tried to remove the victim's clothing before police arrived. He would first throw out the coat, then realize it might float. Hearing Mrs. St. Clair below and knowing police were near, he would have only moments to make it sink. Boone could have taken the accumulated coins from his begging money and stuffed them into the pockets before throwing the coat into the Thames. He might have intended to dispose of every other garment the same way, but footsteps on the stairs forced him to hide them behind the curtain and close the window. The theory explained the weighted coat, remaining clothes, blood, tide, and timing. Holmes stressed very clearly that it was only the best working hypothesis available, not a solved case. It did not prove that Neville had died, explain why he had entered the opium den, or establish what role Boone actually played.